January 24th, 1945, 04:10 a.m. Auschwitz-Birkenau. The cold came first. Always the cold. It crept through the gaps in the barrack walls like something alive, crawling over skin that had forgotten what warmth felt like. I lay on the wooden planks, pressed between bodies that shivered or didn't move at all, and listened to the darkness. In Auschwitz, the silence was never empty. It was a warning. The wind outside carried frost through every crack, turning breath into white clouds that hung in the air before vanishing. My lungs burned with each inhale. The wood beneath me creaked with every slight movement, and somewhere in the rows of bunks, someone coughed. A wet, rattling sound that went on too long before stopping abruptly. No one asked if they were okay. We'd learned not to ask questions we didn't want answered. I couldn't remember the last time I'd slept more than an hour. Sleep meant vulnerability. Sleep meant missing the signs, the boots approaching, the whistle that meant selection, the silence that came before someone disappeared. My eyes stayed open in the dark, fixed on nothing, seeing everything. The chimneys. Even now, even in January, with rumors spreading like fever through the camp, I could see them through the broken slats. Tall shadows against a sky that never seemed fully dark. For months they'd burned. For months that smoke had been the only constant. Thicker than fog, heavier than snow. But tonight, the smoke was thinner. Almost gone. That should have felt like hope. It felt like dread. Around me, whispers moved through the barrack like mice in the walls. Yiddish, Polish, Hungarian, languages blending into a single sound of fear wrapped in exhaustion. Someone said the word evacuation. Someone else said front line. A third voice, hoarse and broken, said, "They'll kill us all before they let us be found." I didn't know which voice to believe. I didn't know if it mattered. My fingers traced the edge of the wooden plank beneath me, a habit I'd developed to remind myself I was still solid, still here. The cold had made my hands stiff, the joints swollen and purple. I wore the same striped uniform I'd been given 18 months ago. It hung on me now like a costume for a ghost. The fabric had worn thin at the elbows and knees, and there were holes I couldn't remember getting. 18 months. Or was it 19? Time had become elastic here, stretching and compressing without logic. Days blurred into one another, marked only by roll calls and the sound of dogs barking and the taste of soup that wasn't soup at all. I tried to remember my mother's face. I tried every night. Sometimes I could see her eyes. Sometimes just her hands, the way they moved when she kneaded bread. Sometimes nothing at all, just a shape where memory should be. The camp had a way of stealing things you couldn't see. Thoughts, names, the faces of people you loved. It took them slowly. So slowly you didn't notice until you reached for them and found only empty air. But I still had one face, one name. Daniel, my brother. Younger by 3 years, taller by half a head, braver than I'd ever been. The last time I saw him was 6 weeks ago, maybe 7. They'd moved him to another barrack after a selection. He'd looked back at me as they led him away, and his eyes had said, "Don't follow." His eyes had said, "Survive." I hadn't seen him since. Every morning at roll call, I searched the rows of faces. Every evening I listened for his voice. Every night I told myself tomorrow. Tomorrow I'd find him. Tomorrow the rumors would be true and the Russians would arrive, and this would end, and we'd walk out together. But tomorrow was a luxury in Auschwitz. Tomorrow was a fantasy. The barrack door rattled. Just wind, probably. Or a guard checking latches. Or something worse. My body tensed, every muscle coiled tight despite the exhaustion. Around me, the whispers stopped. In the dark, dozens of pairs of eyes opened. We waited. The door didn't open. The boots didn't come. After a long moment, someone exhaled. And the whispers started again. Quieter now. "They're leaving," a voice said in the dark. I didn't recognize it. The guards. They're burning papers, destroying evidence. "How do you know?" "I saw it, through the fence. They're panicking." "If they're panicking," another voice said, "that means they'll kill us faster." No one argued. We'd seen it before. The sudden violence that came when the SS felt cornered. The wild dogs let loose in the yard. The random beatings that left bodies crumpled in the mud. Fear made them cruel. Fear made them efficient. Outside, something metal clanged against metal. Then came the sound I'd learned to hear even in sleep. The growl of truck engines starting, one after another. The low rumble carried through the frozen ground, vibrating in my bones. My heart kicked against my ribs. The trucks meant movement. Movement meant decisions. Decisions meant life or death. Chosen by someone else. Always chosen by someone else. Footsteps. Many of them. Heavy boots on frozen earth, moving with purpose. The dogs started barking, sharp, aggressive sounds that cut through the cold. Then a voice, German, sharp as a whip crack. "Raus! Raus! Schnell!" The barrack door slammed open. Freezing air rushed in like a flood. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness, blinding and disorienting. The dogs barked louder. Someone screamed. Bodies scrambled down from the bunks, limbs tangling, people falling. I didn't move fast enough. A guard grabbed my arm and yanked me forward. I felt my shoulder pop, white light exploding behind my eyes. My feet hit the floor and nearly gave out, but his grip kept me upright. He shoved me toward the door. "Move," I moved. The cold outside was a living thing. It bit exposed skin, turned lungs to ice with every breath. I stumbled into the yard, barely keeping my feet under me as prisoners poured from the barracks in a chaotic flood. Striped uniforms everywhere, gray faces, hollow eyes catching the beam of flashlights that swept back and forth like searchlights hunting prey. The Appellplatz stretched before us, the roll call square where we'd stood countless mornings, frozen and swaying, waiting to be counted like cattle. Now it was worse. Now it was pandemonium. Form lines, Schnell, Schnell. The guards screamed from every direction. Their voices overlapped, commands contradicting each other. Dogs strained against leashes, teeth bared, strings of saliva freezing in the air. One lunged at a man who moved too slowly. The snap of jaws, the scream, short and cut off. I didn't look. Looking meant seeing. Seeing meant remembering. I was already carrying too much. My feet found their place in some semblance of a line. Bodies pressed against me from both sides, shivering, trembling. The man next to me was praying under his breath. The Shema whispered so quietly I almost couldn't hear it. On my other side, a woman stared straight ahead, her expression completely blank. I'd seen that look before. The eyes of someone who'd already died inside. The snow beneath our feet was churned to mud and ice, dark patches where it wasn't white anymore. My wooden clogs offered no protection. I couldn't feel my toes. Hadn't felt them in weeks, maybe months. Frostbite had turned 2 of them black. I'd watched a man lose 3 fingers to gangrene last month. He died 2 days later. How many? Someone whispered behind me. Too many. They can't march us all. Then what? Silence. No one wanted to answer that. The trucks idled behind the guard towers, engines rumbling, exhaust visible in the frozen air. There had to be a dozen of them, maybe more. Not enough to transport everyone, not even close. The mathematics of it settled in my stomach like a stone. They were choosing. A guard walked down the line, his face shadowed beneath his cap. He carried a wooden club in one hand, tapping it against his palm in a steady rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. He stopped in front of the praying man beside me. "You, step forward." The man didn't move. His prayer continued, barely audible. I said, "Step forward." The club came down. I heard the crack before I processed what happened. The man crumpled, his prayer cut off mid-word. The guard stepped over him without looking down. "You," he said, pointing at me. "With the others. Move." I moved. Survival wasn't courage. It was motion without thought, obedience without question. I stepped out of the line and followed his gesture toward a group forming near the gate. 20 prisoners, maybe 30, more being added with each passing second. Behind me, I heard the woman with the blank expression being told to stay. I heard her not respond. I heard the dog that came next. I kept walking. The group I joined stood in loose formation, packed tight for warmth that wasn't there. No one spoke. We watched as the selection continued, guards moving through the lines like farmers sorting livestock. Some prisoners were sent to the trucks, some were sent back to the barracks. Some were left standing where they were, which might have been worse than either option. "Do you know what's happening?" a voice said beside me. I turned. He was young, younger than Daniel, maybe 17. His eyes were too large for his face, sunken into skull-sharp cheekbones. His hands shook, and not just from cold. "Evacuation," I said. "They're moving the camp." "Moving us where?" "Away from the Russians." "That's good, isn't it? The Russians." "We won't live long enough to see the Russians." His face fell. I shouldn't have been so blunt, but lies were a luxury we couldn't afford. The truth was simpler. We were cargo that had become a liability. The SS couldn't let us be found. They couldn't let us tell what we'd seen. A whistle shrieked across the yard. Everyone froze. An officer stepped up onto a wooden crate near the gate, elevated so everyone could see him. He was tall, his uniform immaculate despite the chaos. His face held no expression at all. When he spoke, his voice carried across the frozen silence with perfect clarity. "You will march west. Anyone who cannot keep pace will be left behind. Anyone who attempts escape will be shot. You have 5 minutes to prepare." 5 minutes. To prepare for what? We had nothing. We were nothing. I looked around at the faces near me, gaunt, terrified, resigned. Some still held hope. I could see it in their eyes, that desperate flicker that maybe, somehow, this would lead to something better. I'd stopped hoping months ago. The officer stepped down. Guards began organizing prisoners into columns. The dogs circled, snapping at stragglers. Somewhere behind the barracks, a shot rang out. Then another. No one flinched. Gunshots had become background noise, as common as the wind. The young man beside me started crying, quiet tears that froze on his cheeks. "I can't," he whispered. "I can't walk, my feet." I looked down. His clogs were held together with wire. Dark stains showed through the cracks, blood frozen solid. "You'll walk," I said, "or you'll die here." Maybe dying is better. Maybe. But you won't know until you try. He wiped his face with the back of his hand, smearing tears and dirt. Then he nodded, just once. The columns began to form. I found a place in the middle, where the crowd was thickest, safest. The young man stayed close to me, a shadow I hadn't asked for. And then I heard it, a name carried on someone's breath. "Daniel?" My head snapped around. The voice came from somewhere in the crowd, a question, not a statement. Someone looking for someone else named Daniel, or maybe asking about my Daniel. Or maybe nothing at all, just my mind playing tricks because exhaustion and hunger could make you hear ghosts. But I heard it, and I couldn't move. I turned in a circle, searching faces in the crowd. Striped uniforms blurred together, every face the same gaunt mask of exhaustion and fear. The name had come from somewhere behind me, to the left, maybe closer to the barracks. But the crowd was moving now. Columns forming and shifting, bodies pressed so tight, I could barely see past the person in front of me. "Daniel?" I called out, my voice cracking from disuse. No response, just the continued chaos. Guards shouting, dogs barking, the crunch of frozen mud beneath hundreds of feet. The young man beside me grabbed my arm. "What are you doing? Get back in line." I pulled away from him, pushing through the crowd. Someone cursed at me. Someone else stumbled. A guard's voice cut through the noise. "Hey, get back in formation." I ignored him. My eyes swept across every face I could see, searching for the one that mattered. Daniel had a scar above his left eyebrow from when he was 8. When he'd fallen climbing a tree I'd told him not to climb. He had our father's chin, our mother's eyes. He'd been thin before, but here everyone was thin. How would I even recognize him now? "Daniel!" I shouted louder. A hand grabbed the back of my uniform and yanked me backwards. I sprawled in the mud, landing hard enough to drive the air from my lungs. A boot pressed against my chest, pinning me down. I looked up into the face of a guard, his expression flat and cold. "You want to die before we even start?" "My brother," I gasped. "Someone said his name. I need to—" "You need to get in formation, now." The boot pressed harder. My ribs creaked. Black spots danced at the edges of my vision. Then the pressure released. The guard stepped back, his club raised in warning. "Last chance." I scrambled to my feet, mud and ice coating my uniform. My chest ached with every breath. The young man helped steady me, his grip surprisingly strong for someone so frail. "You can't do that," he whispered urgently. "You can't draw attention." I heard his name. You heard a name. Maybe not even his. And now you're bleeding. I touched my face. My hand came away with blood from where I'd hit the ground. The cold had kept me from feeling it. I wiped it on my uniform, adding another stain to countless others. The columns were nearly formed now, 5 or 6 rows deep, stretching from the gate toward the barracks. Maybe 300 prisoners in total. Behind us, another group was being assembled near the trucks, and behind them, a third group remained standing in the Appellplatz, surrounded by guards with rifles. They weren't being evacuated. They weren't being loaded onto trucks. They were being kept in place. The mathematics clicked together in my mind, cold and certain. 3 groups, 3 fates. The strongest would march. The useful would ride. The rest would be eliminated before the Russians arrived. Clean, efficient, the SS specialty. I looked at the group in the Appellplatz. Hundreds of faces I'd seen every day at roll call, people I'd stood beside, whose names I'd never learned, because learning names meant forming attachments, and attachments meant more pain when they disappeared. An old man I recognized from the factory work detail. A woman who'd shared her water ration with me once when I'd collapsed from heat stroke last summer. A child, maybe 12, who shouldn't have survived this long, but had. They stood silent, waiting. Some knew. I could see it in their postures, the way they'd stopped shivering, stopped reacting to the guards' shouts. They'd accepted it, Others still looked around with confusion, with hope, with a desperate belief that this was some kind of mistake that would be corrected. There were no mistakes in Auschwitz, only choices made by other people about your life. "Move out," the command echoed across the yard. The column lurched forward. I moved with it, each step automatic. The young man stayed close to my side, his breathing labored. Around us, prisoners stumbled and caught themselves, or stumbled and didn't. The first person fell before we'd even reached the gate. A woman, middle-aged, her face gray with exhaustion. Her legs simply gave out beneath her. She went down in the mud, trying to push herself back up, her arms shaking with effort. The column moved around her like water around a stone. A guard approached her. She looked up at him. "Please," she said. "Please, I can walk. Just give me a moment." He raised his pistol. I looked away before the shot. But I heard it, sharp and final, echoing off the barrack walls. The column didn't stop. We kept moving. Behind us, another shot, then another. The guards were clearing obstacles. The gate loomed ahead, the words "Arbeit macht frei" arched above it in iron letters. Work sets you free. The first lie they'd told us. The lie we'd walked under when we arrived, when we'd still believed that work was what this place was about. We passed beneath it now, walking out into the world beyond the fence. I'd forgotten there was a world beyond the fence. For 18 months, the universe had been contained within barbed wire. Now the wire fell away behind us, and ahead stretched only darkness and snow and the narrow road that led west, away from the approaching Russians, away from liberation, deeper into occupied Poland. The cold hit harder out here without the barracks to break the wind. It came straight across the open fields, carrying snow that stung exposed skin like needles. My face went numb within minutes. My hands had long since lost feeling. I shoved them under my arms, trying to preserve what warmth remained in my core. The column stretched ahead and behind me, a line of striped uniforms shuffling through the dark. Guards walked along the sides, rifles ready. Dogs ranged back and forth, their breath steaming. The trucks hadn't followed. They'd gone a different direction, taking their cargo of useful prisoners toward some other destination. We walked. One foot, then the other, then the first foot again. It was all that mattered now, the mechanics of motion, the simple mathematics of survival. Keep moving or fall, fall and die. The equation was elegant in its simplicity. Around me, people began to talk in whispers. The guards were spread thin out here, too few to monitor everyone. Where are they taking us? West, away from the front. How far? Does it matter? The snow's getting heavier. It was. What had been light flurries in the yard had become a steady fall. White flakes that absorbed sound, muffled everything, made the world feel smaller. I could barely see the person 3 rows ahead. Behind us, the lights of Auschwitz faded into the storm. The young man stumbled beside me. I caught his arm without thinking. "Thank you," he breathed. "Save your energy." "What's your name?" I almost didn't answer. Names were dangerous. Names made people real. But the question hung in the air, and he'd helped me when I'd fallen. And maybe that meant something. "Aaron," I said finally. "I'm Jakob." "How old are you, Jakob?" 17, 18 in March. March, 3 months away. Might as well have been 3 years, 3 lifetimes. "You'll make it to 18, I said, though I had no reason to believe it. "Will you look for him? Your brother?" The question caught me off guard. I'd almost forgotten in the chaos of the evacuation, in the shock of walking through the gate. But now it came rushing back. The voice in the crowd, the name spoken, the possibility that Daniel was here, somewhere in the column, close enough to reach. or the possibility that he'd been in one of the other groups, on the trucks, or left behind in the Appellplatz. I don't know, I admitted. You should look, while you still can. While I still can meant while I was still alive, while I still had the strength to search. It meant accepting that time was running out, that whatever window existed for finding Daniel was closing. Another person fell behind us. I heard the thud of a body hitting frozen ground, heard the guard's footsteps approaching. I kept walking. So did Jakob. So did everyone else. You learned quickly not to look back. Looking back meant seeing. Seeing meant carrying one more image you couldn't forget. The shots had become rhythm. Every few minutes, another crack echoing through the snow. The column grew shorter with each one. My feet hurt. Strange, considering I couldn't feel them. But the pain was there anyway, deep in the bones, a grinding ache that traveled up my legs with each step. The wooden clogs rubbed blisters that had burst and frozen. Each step broke open wounds that immediately refroze. I watched the ground, focused on the churned snow in front of me, following the footprints of the person ahead. One foot, other foot, repeat. Time became elastic again. Minutes stretched into hours or compressed into seconds. The snow fell harder. The wind picked up, driving flakes sideways into our faces. I squinted against it, head down, shoulders hunched. Aaron. Jakob's voice was weaker now. What? I can't feel my legs. Keep moving anyway. I don't think I can. You can, just a little further. Further to where? I didn't have an answer. None of us did. We were walking into nothing, toward no destination, for no purpose except to be somewhere other than the camp when the Russians arrived. We were evidence being destroyed, witnesses being eliminated. The only question was whether we'd die on the road or wherever this road led. Jakob stumbled again. This time he went down completely, landing on his hands and knees in the snow. I stopped, reaching down to help him up. His arms shook with effort. His face had gone from gray to blue. Get up, I said. Now. I can't. You can. Get up. A guard approached, his footsteps crunching through the snow. His rifle hung loose in his hands. His expression hadn't changed, the same flat neutrality they all wore, as if we weren't people at all. He's getting up, I said quickly. He just slipped. The guard stopped 3 meters away. He looked at Jakob, then at me, then back at Jakob. He's slowing you down. He's fine. We're moving. I hauled Jakob to his feet. He swayed, barely standing. I kept my grip on his arm, holding him upright through will as much as strength. Walk, I whispered to him. Right now, walk. Jakob took a step, then another. Shuffling, barely moving, but moving. The guard watched for a long moment, then turned and walked back toward the front of the column. I kept my hand on Jakob's arm. We moved together, step by agonizing step. He was leaning on me now, his weight dragging at my shoulder. I could feel my own legs starting to shake with the effort. Why are you helping me? Jakob asked. Because you're someone's brother, I thought. Because maybe somewhere in this column, someone is helping Daniel. Because if I stop helping, I stop being human, and that's what they want. For us to become nothing, to forget we were ever people with names and families and futures. Because I can, I said instead. The column moved on. The snow erased our footprints as quickly as we made them. Behind us, the shots continued, spaced further apart now as we spread out along the road. The weak fell first, then the injured. Then those who'd simply reached the limit of what a body could endure. I thought about the group in the Appellplatz. Were they dead already? Were they still standing there, waiting? Was Daniel among them? The question twisted in my chest, sharper than the cold. And then, from somewhere ahead in the column, cutting through the wind and snow and the sound of shuffling feet, I heard it again. A voice. Hoarse, broken, but unmistakable. Aaron. Aaron. My brother's voice. My heart stopped. Started, stopped again. Daniel. I shouted it without thinking, without care for the guards or the consequences. The name tore from my throat raw and desperate. Jacob's weight pulled at my arm, but I barely felt it. My eyes scanned the column ahead, searching through the falling snow for movement, for recognition, for anything. Daniel! Aaron, where are you? His voice came from maybe 20 meters ahead, obscured by the curve of the column and the bodies between us. Alive. He was alive. After 6 weeks of searching faces at roll call, of listening for his voice in the barracks, of imagining him dead or transported or selected, he was here. Walking the same death march, breathing the same frozen air. I started forward, pulling Jakob with me. We pushed through the column, squeezing between prisoners who barely noticed us. Someone cursed, someone else shoved back. I didn't care. Daniel was ahead. Daniel was calling my name. Stay in formation. A guard's voice, distant, not directed at me specifically. Not yet. Aaron, I can't. Jakob's weight increased, his legs giving out. I caught him before he fell completely. Just a little further, I said. My brother, he's here. Go, Jakob breathed. Find him. I'm not leaving you. You have to. His eyes met mine. In them I saw the same resignation I'd seen in the woman with the blank expression back in the Appellplatz. He'd already made his decision. He'd already let go. Jakob, no. Find your brother, he said. Tell him. Tell him someone helped you. Tell him we're not all lost. His weight slipped from my arm. He sank to his knees in the snow, slowly, almost peacefully. His head bowed forward, his hands rested in his lap. Jakob! I grabbed for him, tried to pull him back up. Keep moving, a guard shouted, closer now. Jakob looked up at me one last time. Go. I went. I left him kneeling in the snow and pushed forward through the column, hating myself, hating him for making me choose, hating this place that turned every decision into a calculation of who deserved to live more. My throat burned. My eyes stung with something that wasn't just the wind. Behind me, I heard the guard reach Jakob. I heard the question asked. I heard the silence that followed. I didn't hear the shot, but I felt it. A sharp crack that went through my chest like the bullet had hit me instead. I kept walking. Daniel! My voice was breaking now, hoarse from the cold and the screaming. Where are you? Here, Aaron, I'm... His voice cut off, muffled. I pushed harder through the crowd, shoving past people who couldn't get out of the way fast enough. And then the column opened up slightly, and I saw him. 20 meters ahead. Striped uniform like everyone else, but I knew him instantly. The way he held his shoulders, slightly hunched. The shape of his head, the way his hair had been shaved, but was growing back in uneven patches. He was turned away from me, facing a guard who had one hand on his chest, holding him back. Daniel. He twisted around, and our eyes met across the distance. I'd forgotten how eyes could speak. In Auschwitz, most people's eyes had gone dead. Windows to empty rooms. But Daniel's eyes were alive, wide with shock and something else. Fear, relief, desperation. All of it at once, crashing together in a single look that said, I thought you were dead, and I thought I'd never see you again, and please don't be a dream. Aaron, he mouthed, his voice lost in the wind. I started toward him. The guard who'd been holding him back shifted, his hand dropping to the pistol at his belt. Another guard intercepted me, his rifle suddenly across my chest, stopping me cold. Back in formation. That's my brother, right there. Please, I just need formation, now. The rifle pressed harder. I could feel the cold metal through the thin fabric of my uniform, could see my reflection distorted in the barrel. Behind me, the column kept moving, flowing around us like water. Daniel was being pulled forward by the current of bodies, the distance between us growing. Daniel, I shouted over the guard's shoulder. I'll find you, Daniel called back. At the next stop, I'll find you. The guard shoved me backward. I stumbled, caught myself. By the time I looked up again, Daniel had disappeared into the crowd, swallowed by striped uniforms and falling snow. But he was alive. The knowledge settled in my chest, warm despite the cold. He was alive. We were both alive, and he'd said he would find me. I rejoined the column, finding a gap in the formation. My legs moved automatically now, but everything had changed. The death march was still a death march. The snow still fell. The guards still shot stragglers. But Daniel was alive, and that single fact rewrote everything. The man walking beside me glanced over. Your brother? I nodded, not trusting my voice. That's good, he said. His accent was Hungarian, thick but understandable. Good to have someone. Do you have anyone? He shook his head. Had a son. Lost him in July. Selection. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be alive. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Every day we're alive is a victory they didn't want us to have. We walked in silence for a while. The snow was ankle-deep now, making each step harder. My clogs filled with it, melting against skin that had no warmth to give. The column had spread out, gaps forming between groups as the stronger prisoners pulled ahead and the weaker fell behind. Where do you think they're taking us? I asked. The Hungarian shrugged. West. Maybe Wodzisław. Maybe further. Maybe nowhere, just walking until we all die. The front is close. I heard artillery yesterday. I heard it too. He lowered his voice. The Russians are maybe 50, 60 kilometers east. 2 days at most. But we're walking away from them. So we have to survive 2 days. No. His tone was gentle but firm. We have to survive every minute of 2 days, every step, every breath. That's how you measure time now, not in hours, but in heartbeats. He was right. The future had collapsed into the immediate present, not what would happen tomorrow or when we reached wherever we were going, but simply, can I take another step? Can I stay upright? Can I keep breathing? A woman ahead of us stumbled and nearly fell. The man next to her, her husband maybe, or just someone who decided to care, caught her arm and held her steady. They exchanged no words, just a look, and kept walking. Small acts of humanity. They still existed here, even now. Jakob helping me. Me helping Jakob, the woman who'd shared water last summer. These moments, brief as matches struck in the dark, proved we were still human despite everything designed to make us forget. What's your name? I asked the Hungarian. Istvan. I'm Aaron. I know. I heard you shouting. A slight smile. The whole column heard you shouting. Was it stupid, drawing attention? Maybe. Istvan considered. But you found him, didn't you? Sometimes stupid is the only brave we have left. Ahead, the column was slowing. Word passed back through the ranks, whispered, cautious, that we were stopping. Arrest, maybe? Or another selection? Or something worse? The prisoners bunched together, shoulders touching, sharing body heat that didn't exist. Guards moved through the crowd, counting. Their breath steamed in the air. They looked cold too, I realized. Not as cold as us, with their thick coats and boots, but cold enough to want this over with. Cold enough to be impatient. An officer stood on the roadside, consulting a map by flashlight. Behind him, the snow fell heavier, erasing everything. "Listen," Istvan said quietly. "When we stop, stay in the middle of the group, not the edges. The edges are where they pull people for selections." "How do you know?" "I've survived 3 camps. You learn the patterns." He paused. "And find your brother. Whatever happens next, you'll want him close." The column stopped completely. We stood pressed together, swaying slightly, exhausted bodies seeking balance. Steam rose from hundreds of mouths, creating a fog that mixed with the snow. No one spoke. We waited for the guards to decide what came next. I scanned the faces around me, looking for Daniel. The falling snow made it hard to see more than a few meters. Striped uniforms blended together, every face the same mask of exhaustion. But somewhere in this crowd, Daniel was doing the same thing, searching for me. A guard's whistle cut through the silence. 10-minute rest. Anyone who sits doesn't get back up. 10 minutes. Not long enough to recover. Just long enough to realize how much everything hurt. Around me, prisoners remained standing, shifting weight from foot to foot, trying to keep blood moving. Some prayed. Some stared at nothing. Some, like me, kept searching the crowd. And then I saw him. 3 rows ahead, turned partially away. But I'd know that profile anywhere. The line of his jaw, the way he tilted his head slightly when he was concentrating. He was alone, standing with his arms wrapped around himself, head bowed against the wind. I pushed through the crowd toward him. Istvan's advice echoed in my mind. Stay in the middle, don't draw attention. But I was already moving. Every step brought me closer. 2 rows, 1 row, almost there. Daniel turned just as I reached him. For a moment, we just stared at each other. His face was thinner than I remembered, cheekbones sharp as blades, eyes sunken into dark hollows. A bruise colored his left cheek purple and yellow. His lips were cracked and bleeding. But his eyes were the same. Still Daniel. Still my brother. "Aaron," he breathed. Then his arms were around me and mine around him, and we held each other in the middle of the death march while the snow fell and the guards watched and the world ended and began again all at once. We didn't speak at first. Words felt too small for what we needed to say. Daniel's arms shook against my back, exhaustion or emotion, probably both. I could feel his ribs through the thin uniform, every bone distinct. How much weight had he lost? How much had I? We were both ghosts, wearing the shapes of brothers. I thought... His voice cracked. "Every day at roll call, I looked for you." I know, I did the same. They moved my barrack. After the selection, I tried to find you, but I know. We pulled apart. His hand stayed on my shoulders, as if letting go would make me disappear. His eyes searched my face with the same desperate inventory I was doing, cataloging damage, noting wounds, checking for signs of how close to the edge the other one was. "You're bleeding," he said, touching the cut on my forehead where I'd fallen earlier. "It's nothing. Your face." I gestured to the bruise. "A guard, 2 days ago. Wrong place, wrong time. He tried to smile. Failed. The usual. Around us, the 10-minute rest continued. Prisoners stood in small clusters, some alone, all of them swaying with exhaustion. The snow had eased slightly, but the cold remained, constant and killing. Steam rose from our bodies like souls trying to escape. "How long have you been in the column?" I asked. "Since the beginning. They pulled us out of Barrack 7 around 4. You?" "Barrack 12, same time." "Did you see?" He stopped. Started again. "The group they left behind, in the Appellplatz?" I nodded. We both understood what that meant. What had probably already happened or would happen soon. Neither of us said it aloud. Some truths were too heavy to give voice. "Where do you think they're taking us?" Daniel asked. "West, away from the Russians. Istvan, a man I met in the column, thinks maybe Władysław, maybe further." "Who's Istvan?" "Someone who's survived 3 camps. He knows the patterns." "And what pattern is this?" I looked at the guards spaced along the column, at the officers consulting maps, at the trucks that hadn't followed us from the camp. "Elimination," I said quietly. "They're marching us until we die, or until they find somewhere to finish us." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then we don't let them." "Don't let them what?" "Finish us. We survive. Together." His hands gripped my shoulders harder. "Promise me, Aaron. Whatever happens." "Daniel, promise me." The word hung between us, heavy with implication. Promising meant believing we could survive. Believing meant hoping. And hope in Auschwitz was the cruelest joke of all, a light that kept you stumbling forward even when mercy would have been to stop. But looking at my brother's face, seeing the desperate need there, I couldn't refuse him. "I promise," I said. He exhaled, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. Okay. So we stay together. When the march starts again, we don't get separated." "Agreed." "And we stay in the middle. Not too far forward where the guards pay attention, not too far back where stragglers get shot." Istvan said the same thing. "Your Istvan is smart." Daniel glanced around, lowering his voice further. "Have you heard the rumors?" "Which ones?" "There are always rumors." "About the march. That they're going to stop at some point and make us dig." The word settled in my stomach like ice. Dig. We both knew what that meant. Mass graves, self-dug. The Germans' efficiency extended even to making victims prepare their own execution sites. "It's just a rumor," I said, not believing it. "Maybe. But if it's true..." Daniel's eyes met mine. "If it's true, we run." "Run where?" "We're in the middle of Poland in January. No papers, no money, wearing camp uniforms. We'd freeze or starve or get shot by the first patrol that found us. Better than digging our own graves." He wasn't wrong. But running meant leaving everyone else. It meant abandoning hope that liberation was coming, that the Russians would arrive in time. It meant choosing our lives over the slim chance that somehow, against all odds, this would end differently. "Let's see what happens," I said. "One step at a time. Like you said, we survived together." Daniel nodded, but I could see the calculation behind his eyes. He was already planning, already thinking through scenarios. That was Daniel, always 3 steps ahead, always preparing for the worst while hoping for better. It's what had kept him alive this long. A whistle shrieked. The 10 minutes were over. "Form up. Prepare to move." The guards began pushing through the crowd, separating clusters, organizing the column back into rough formation. Daniel's hand found mine, squeezed once. "Stay close," he said. "I will." We moved back into position, side by side now. The column reformed around us, prisoners finding their places with practiced efficiency. Istvan appeared on my other side, nodding acknowledgement when he saw Daniel. "Your brother?" "Yes. Daniel, this is Istvan." They exchanged brief nods. No handshakes, no pleasantries. In Auschwitz, you learn to conserve even the energy for social rituals. "Stay between us," Istvan said to Daniel. "3 is safer than 2. We can support each other." The column began moving. Slower now, everyone exhausted from even the brief rest. My legs had stiffened during the stop, and the first step sent pain shooting up from my frozen feet. Beside me, Daniel limped slightly, favoring his left leg. "Your leg?" I asked. "Twisted ankle, last week. It hasn't healed properly." "Can you walk?" "I don't have a choice." We settled into the rhythm, one foot, then the other, then the first again. The snow had started falling heavier once more, thick flakes that clung to eyelashes and filled the air with white. Visibility dropped to maybe 10 meters. The column became a ghost march, shadows moving through static. Time dissolved? Minutes or hours? Impossible to tell. The world narrowed to the space immediately around me. Daniel on my right, Istvan on my left, the back of someone's head in front, the crunch of snow beneath wooden clogs. Nothing else existed. Nothing else mattered. "Aaron." Daniel's voice quiet. "Do you remember Mama's challah?" The question came from nowhere, jarring in its normalcy. "What?" "Her challah. Friday nights. Do you remember?" I did. The braided bread, golden and warm, the way she'd tear pieces for each of us before the blessing. The smell of it filling our small apartment, making everything feel safe and whole. A lifetime ago. A different world. "Yes," I said. "I remember. I've been trying to remember the recipe. I can't. I can't remember if she used 4 eggs or 5. Isn't that stupid? I can remember everything else, the way she shaped the braids, how long she let it rise, but not the eggs. Why does it matter?" "Because when this is over..." He stopped, breathed, continued. "When this is over, I want to make it. For us. And I need to get it right. When this is over." The phrase felt like faith or delusion. Impossible to distinguish between them. But Daniel said it with such quiet certainty that I almost believed him. 4 eggs, I said, though I wasn't sure either. "I think it was 4. "You're just saying that." "Maybe. But when we get out, we'll figure it out together." He smiled. Small, barely there, but real. "Yeah, together." Istvan glanced over at us. "You two sound like you believe you'll survive." "Don't you?" Daniel asked. "I believe in the next step. Then the next. I don't look further than that." That's sad. That's survival. Istvan's tone wasn't unkind. "Hope is expensive. Most can't afford it." "Then we'll be in debt," Daniel said. "I don't care. Aaron and I are getting out of this." I wanted his certainty, wanted to feel it myself. But I'd seen too many people who'd believed they'd survive, who'd had plans and dreams and futures mapped out in their minds. I'd watched them fall in the mud, watched the light leave their eyes, watched them become just another body left behind on the road. Still, Daniel was here. We'd found each other against impossible odds. Maybe that meant something. Maybe that was its own kind of sign. Or maybe it just meant we'd have to watch each other die. Ahead, the column was slowing again. Not stopping. Just slowing. Word passed back through the ranks. Trouble ahead. A bridge maybe, or a checkpoint. something that required reorganization. The guards moved up along the column, their voices sharp with orders I couldn't quite hear. Prisoners bunched together, the formation compressing. Bodies pressed close, seeking warmth that wasn't there. "Something's wrong," Istvan muttered. "How do you know?" "The guards, look at them." I looked. He was right. Their postures had changed, tense, alert, weapons ready. They kept glancing at each other, at the officers, at something ahead we couldn't see. "What do you think it is?" Daniel asked. Istvan shook his head. "Nothing good." The column came to a complete stop. We stood packed together, waiting. The snow fell harder, muffling sound. From somewhere ahead came voices, German, shouting. An engine started, then another. Trucks. "They're reorganizing," Istvan said, splitting the column. "How can you tell?" "Because I've seen this before." My chest tightened. Another selection. They were going to separate us again, the strong from the weak, the useful from the expendable. And Daniel and I had just found each other. "We stay together," Daniel said, reading my thoughts. "No matter what. If they try to separate us, we stay together," I repeated. Guards began moving through the column, pulling prisoners out seemingly at random. An old man, 3 women, a young boy who couldn't have been more than 14. They were being directed toward the trucks, loading up in the cargo beds. "Is that better or worse?" Daniel whispered. "The trucks? I don't know." A guard approached our section. He looked us over with practiced efficiency, the way a farmer might evaluate livestock. His eyes lingered on Daniel's limp, on Istvan's gray hair, on the blood crusted on my face. "You," he said, pointing at Istvan. "Truck." "No," Daniel said. The word escaped before he could stop it. The guard's attention snapped to him. "What did you say?" Daniel's jaw set. I could see him making a choice, weighing options in the split second he had. "We stay together, the 3 of us. You don't make demands." "I'm not demanding, I'm asking." Daniel's voice stayed level. "We work better together. We're stronger as a group." The guard stared at him for a long moment. Then, inexplicably, he nodded. "All 3. Truck." He moved on before we could respond. Istvan, Daniel, and I exchanged glances. "What just happened?" I asked. "Your brother just saved my life," Istvan said. "Or condemned us all. Too soon to tell." We were herded toward the trucks with maybe 50 other prisoners. The cargo beds were already half full, bodies packed tight. Guards with rifles stood at the tailgates, monitoring the loading. I helped Istvan climb up, then Daniel, then pulled myself in after them. The truck's metal floor was freezing through my thin uniform. We pressed together with the others, trying to share heat. Daniel stayed close to my side, his shoulder against mine. Real, solid, still alive. The engine rumbled to life beneath us. The truck lurched forward, and I realized we were separating from the column, taking a different route, toward a different fate. Daniel's hand found mine in the dark. "Together," he whispered. "Together," I echoed. The truck rolled west through the snow, carrying us toward whatever came next. The truck bed was a metal coffin. 50 bodies pressed together, swaying with each turn of the wheels, breathing the same recycled air that tasted of fear and sweat and something darker. No one spoke. The engine's rumble swallowed everything else. Thought, hope, the ability to imagine what came next. I couldn't see much beyond the bodies surrounding me. A sliver of gray sky through a gap in the canvas covering. The silhouettes of guards standing at the tailgate, rifles across their chests. Daniel's profile beside me, jaw clenched, eyes staring at nothing. The cold was worse here than walking. At least movement generated some heat, kept blood flowing. Now we sat motionless, the wind cutting through gaps in the canvas, the metal beneath us leaching what little warmth remained in our bodies. My feet had gone from painful to numb to non-existent. I wasn't sure I still had feet. Might have been stumps of ice attached to my legs. "How long have we been driving?" Daniel whispered. I shook my head. Time had become meaningless. Could have been 20 minutes or 2 hours. The world outside the truck was invisible. Just the sensation of movement, the occasional lurch when the driver hit rough road. Istvan leaned close. "We're heading northwest. I can tell by the turns." "How do you know?" "You learn to navigate by feeling when you can't see." His breath came in short gasps. The truck ride was harder on him. Older body, less resilience. Northwest means away from the front. Away from liberation. "Maybe they're taking us to another camp," someone said from the darkness. Hope clinging to words. "Somewhere to work until the war ends." No one responded. We all knew better. The camps were being evacuated, not expanded. The Russians were coming, and the SS was destroying evidence. We weren't workers anymore. We were witnesses who needed to disappear. The truck hit a pothole. Bodies lurched, crashed together, untangled. Someone cried out. Pain or fear, impossible to tell. The guards shouted something in German. The truck steadied and continued. My mind drifted, exhaustion and cold creating a strange dissociation. I was in the truck and outside it simultaneously. I was 11 years old, watching Daniel climb that tree, calling up to him to be careful. I was 17, standing in our apartment while Nazis processed papers, while our mother tried to negotiate, while our father stood silent because there was nothing left to say. I was back in Auschwitz, walking through the gate for the first time, reading those iron words, believing the lie. Work sets you free. "Aaron." Daniel's voice pulled me back. His hand gripped my arm, shaking slightly. "Stay with me. Don't drift. I'm here." "You were gone. I could see it." His eyes locked on mine, intense despite the dim light. "Remember what we promised? Together. That means staying present." I nodded. He was right. Drifting was dangerous. Drifting was how people slipped away, how consciousness became something negotiable, how you stopped fighting and just let the cold take you. "Tell me something," I said. "Something real. From before." "Like what?" "Anything. Just talk." Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then, "The violin." "What about it?" "Do you remember when Papa taught me to play?" I was terrible, screeching like a cat being murdered. A ghost of a smile. "You used to cover your ears and run out of the room. You got better." I did. "And you'd sit and listen, even when I wasn't very good. You never complained." "I liked hearing you practice." "Liar." "I did. It meant you were there. It meant everything was normal." I swallowed against the tightness in my throat. "I'd give anything to hear you play again." "When we get out," Daniel started. The truck slammed to a stop. Bodies crashed forward. I hit the person in front of me, heard the breath driven from their lungs. Daniel caught himself against the truck's side. Istvan went down, disappearing beneath the press of bodies. "Out! Everyone out!" The tailgate dropped with a metallic crash. Guards appeared, rifles raised, shouting orders. Dogs barked, sharp, aggressive sounds that meant don't hesitate, don't think, just move. Prisoners scrambled toward the opening, climbing over each other in panic and desperation. I grabbed Istvan's arm, pulled him up. Daniel was already at the tailgate, helping people down. We moved as a unit, staying together, fighting through the chaos. My feet hit the ground. Pain exploded up my legs, sensation returning in the worst way, nerves screaming. I nearly went down, but Daniel caught me. We stood there swaying, while the rest of the prisoners emptied from the trucks. I looked around, trying to understand where we were. Forest. Dense pine trees on all sides, branches heavy with snow. A narrow dirt road, churned to mud by the truck tires. No buildings, no camp structures. Just woods and the trucks and the guards forming a perimeter, rifles ready. And in the center of the clearing, shovels. Maybe 30 of them, piled in the snow like some kind of offering. The mathematics clicked into place instantly. Forest, shovels, no camp. Oh God. Daniel breathed beside me. Istvan's face had gone gray. I told you this was the pattern. The rumor had been true. They weren't marching us to another camp. They were bringing us here to dig. And there was only one thing you dug in the middle of a forest in winter. Mass grave. Form lines, a guard shouted. 5 rows, quickly. We moved on autopilot, muscle memory from months of following orders. 5 rows of 10 prisoners each. The guards surrounded us, maybe 15 of them, plus the drivers. Enough guns to kill us all without breaking a sweat. An officer stepped forward. Young, maybe 30, his uniform pristine despite the mud and snow. He carried no weapon that I could see. Didn't need one. The rifles behind him were weapon enough. "You will dig," he said. His German was crisp, clear, almost polite. 3 meters deep, 4 meters wide, 20 meters long. You have 2 hours. 2 hours to dig our own grave. Then they'd shoot us and push us in and cover us up and drive away, and no one would ever know we'd existed. Efficient, clean, the SS specialty. And if we refuse? Someone said it, don't know who, the voice came from behind me. Brave or stupid or just past caring. The officer didn't answer. He nodded to a guard who raised his rifle and fired. The shot cracked across the clearing. The man who'd spoken dropped. The echo faded into the trees. Anyone else have questions? Silence. Good. Begin. The guards herded us toward the shovels. Daniel, Istvan, and I moved together, each taking a tool. The metal was so cold it burned to touch. My hand stuck to the handle, skin freezing to iron. The first shovelful of earth was impossible. The ground was frozen solid, harder than stone. The blade scraped across the surface, barely leaving a mark. Around me, other prisoners faced the same problem. We weren't digging so much as scratching at ice. "This is insane," someone muttered. "We can't dig through this." "We have to try," Istvan said. "If we don't try, they shoot us now." So we tried. All 50 of us, stabbing shovels into frozen earth, chipping away microscopic amounts, making no progress at all. Steam rose from our bodies as exertion warmed muscles that hadn't moved properly in months. Sweat formed despite the cold, freezing on skin, creating another layer of ice. 10 minutes passed. We'd maybe cleared a few centimeters of topsoil. The math was simple and brutal. 2 hours to dig 3 meters deep. We'd need to move exponentially faster. But our bodies were broken, starved, operating on fumes and willpower. We couldn't work faster. We could barely work at all. A guard walked through the clearing, surveying our progress. He stopped at our section, looked at the pitiful scrape in the ground. "Faster," he said. Daniel drove his shovel down with more force. The blade struck frozen earth and bounced back, nearly hitting him in the face. He tried again. Same result. "This isn't working," he said quietly. "Keep trying," I whispered. "As long as we're trying, we're alive." But the truth sat heavy in my chest. This was theater. The digging was impossible, and the officers knew it. They weren't actually expecting us to complete it. They were just making us go through the motions, extending the cruelty, forcing us to participate in our own execution by pretending there was a chance we could buy more time. 20 minutes. The hole was maybe a foot deep in places, irregular and shallow. Prisoners were slowing, exhaustion winning. Some had stopped entirely, standing with shovels in hand, staring at nothing, waiting for the inevitable. A shot rang out. One of the ones who'd stopped fell. The guard who'd fired didn't even lower his rifle completely before scanning for the next target. Everyone resumed digging. Faster now, frantic, knowing that stopping meant death, but also knowing that continuing only delayed it. We were trapped in the mathematics of atrocity. Istvan collapsed, just dropped, his shovel falling from his hands. I reached for him, but Daniel got there first, trying to pull him up. "Istvan, come on, get up." "Can't." His breathing was ragged, chest heaving. "My heart, it's—" "Get up." Daniel's voice was desperate. "Please, you have to get up." A guard approached. I stepped between him and Istvan without thinking, my shovel raised in some pathetic gesture of defense. "He needs a minute, just 1 minute." The guard looked at me like I was an insect. "Move. Please." The rifle butt hit my stomach. I went down, gasping, the world spinning. Through watering eyes, I saw the guard raise his pistol. Saw Daniel lunge forward, saw Istvan raise one hand, as if he could stop the bullet through will alone. The shot was very loud. Istvan jerked backward and lay still. Daniel caught me as I tried to rise, his arms wrapping around my chest, holding me back. "Don't, Aaron, don't. There's nothing you can do." But I could still see Istvan's face, could see his eyes, still open, staring at the sky. 3 camps he'd survived, 3 camps of selections and beatings and starvation. And here, in a forest whose name we didn't know, a guard whose face I'd forget had ended him with a single bullet. "Back to work." The officer's voice cut through the clearing. 1 hour remaining. We dug. What else could we do? Daniel and I drove our shovels into the frozen earth, making no real progress, but moving because movement meant we weren't dead yet. Around us, other prisoners did the same. Some cried while they worked. Some prayed. Some had gone completely blank, bodies moving on automatic while their minds fled somewhere safer. The hole grew slowly, maybe 3 feet deep now, irregular and rough. Not nearly enough. Would never be enough. My hands were bleeding. The shovel handle had worn through frozen skin, creating wounds that wept and froze and wept again. Every movement sent pain shooting up my arms. But the pain meant I was still feeling, still alive, still present. "Aaron." Daniel's voice was steady despite everything. "When they tell us to stop digging, we run." "What?" "We run. Into the forest. It's our only chance. They'll shoot us. They're going to shoot us anyway." He kept digging, not looking at me. "At least this way we choose. We don't just stand at the edge and wait. The dogs, I know. But maybe we get lucky. Maybe the trees are thick enough. Maybe—" His voice cracked. "Maybe it's better than this." I looked at the forest surrounding us. Dense pines, heavy snow, kilometers of nothing in every direction. Even if we made it past the first volley of bullets, past the dogs, past the immediate perimeter, Then what? We'd freeze or starve or get caught by the next patrol. We were wearing striped uniforms, our heads shaved, our bodies skeletal. We couldn't hide what we were. But Daniel was right. Anything was better than standing at the edge of our own grave, waiting for the order. Together? I asked. Together. Around us, other prisoners were slowing. The guards had stopped shooting stragglers, maybe realizing there weren't enough of us left to fill the grave properly, or maybe just conserving ammunition. The hole was maybe 4 feet deep now, nowhere close to the ordered depth. The 2 hours were almost up. The officer checked his watch, looked at the hole, looked at us. "Stop," he said. The command rippled through the clearing, shovels lowered. 50 prisoners stood at the edge of the inadequate grave we'd dug, breathing hard, waiting. The guards formed a line, rifles raised, aimed. "Edge of the pit," the officer ordered. "Single file." This was it. The mathematics reached their conclusion. All the suffering, all the survival, all the promises made and kept and broken. It all ended here, in a forest whose name we didn't know, on a day whose date we couldn't remember. Daniel's hand found mine. "On 3, he whispered. "We run for the trees on the left. Don't stop. Don't look back." Daniel. 1. The prisoners started moving toward the pit's edge. Slow, shuffling steps. Some were crying, some praying, some just silent. 2. I looked at my brother, at his face, thin and bruised, but still recognizably Daniel. Still the boy who'd climbed trees and played violin and believed we'd survive. I wanted to memorize him, wanted to carry this image into whatever came next. The guards steadied their rifles. 3. We ran. Everything happened at once. Daniel yanked my hand, pulling me sideways, away from the pit, toward the tree line. Around us, chaos erupted. Shouts, gunfire, screams. I didn't look back, didn't see who fell or who followed or how many rifles were aimed at us. I just ran. My legs barely worked. Muscles that had been pushed past their limit, beyond exhaustion, beyond pain, suddenly screaming back to life with adrenaline and terror. The forest was maybe 20 meters away. 15. 10. Bullets tore through the air. I heard them. Sharp cracks, impacts against trees, the wet sound of one hitting flesh somewhere behind us. Daniel's hand never let go of mine. We ran together, stumbling, nearly falling, somehow staying upright. 5 meters. The tree line was so close. Dark pines, thick trunks, shadows deep enough to hide in. If we could just reach it. Daniel jerked sideways. The movement was sudden, violent, pulling me off balance. I stumbled, turned, saw him falling, saw the dark stain spreading across his back, just below his left shoulder blade. Saw his eyes meet mine, wide with shock and something else. Regret. No. The word tore from my throat. I tried to catch him, but momentum carried us both down. We hit the snow in a tangle of limbs, still 3 meters from the trees. So close. Close enough to see individual branches, to smell the pine, to imagine safety just beyond reach. Daniel's breath came in short gasps. Blood spread across the snow beneath him, dark and wrong. "Go," he whispered. "Aaron, go. I'm not leaving you. You have to. Together. We promised. Together." His hand tightened on mine. "Then keep the promise. Survive. For both of us." Boots crunched through snow behind us. The guards were coming. I could hear the dogs, could hear orders being shouted. We had seconds, maybe less. Daniel pushed me. Weak, barely any force, but the intention clear. "Run. Daniel. Run!" I ran. I left my brother bleeding in the snow, and I ran for the trees, and I hated myself with every step, but I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. His command, his last gift, was survival, and I couldn't refuse him. Not again. Not ever. The forest swallowed me. Branches tore at my uniform, snow dumped from above, darkness closed in. Behind me, more gunshots, more screams, the sounds of atrocity continuing without me. I ran deeper into the trees, no direction, no plan, just away. Away from the clearing, away from the grave, away from Daniel. Eventually, minutes or hours I couldn't tell, I collapsed. My body simply stopped working. I fell into snow up to my chest and couldn't get up. Couldn't move, couldn't do anything but breathe and bleed and exist in this frozen moment. The forest was silent around me. No guards, no dogs, no gunshots. Just silence. The silence that still screams. Cold became everything. Not pain, not grief. Not the images replaying behind my eyes. Daniel falling, the blood, his last command. Just cold. It filled every space inside me, turned thoughts to ice, made breathing a mechanical process divorced from will. I don't know how long I lay there. Time had stopped meaning anything. The snow beneath me was red in places, my blood or someone else's, I couldn't tell. My hands had frozen to the fabric of my uniform. When I tried to move my fingers, nothing happened. Above me, pine branches swayed in wind I couldn't feel. Gray sky showed through gaps in the canopy. No sun. Just uniform grayness that could have been dawn or dusk or the permanent twilight of winter in Poland. I should move. Should get deeper into the forest. Should find shelter or warmth or some reason to continue existing. But the commands came from somewhere distant, easily ignored. My body had made its own decision. It was done. The forest offered no judgment. Trees stood silent witness, the same way they'd witnessed the digging, the shooting, the running. They'd seen it all before, men killing men, blood soaking into frozen earth, the mathematical conclusion of hatred. They'd see it again. The forest would outlast all of us. That thought should have been comforting. It wasn't. A sound reached me through the cold. Distant rumbling. Artillery, maybe. Or thunder. Or just blood rushing in my ears as my heart struggled to keep pumping. The sound came from the east. The direction we'd been running from. The direction of liberation that we'd never reach. Daniel wouldn't reach it. The thought broke through the ice. Sharp, devastating. Daniel was dead in a clearing I couldn't name, in a grave he'd been forced to dig, his body buried or left in the snow for animals to find. My brother, who'd climbed trees and played violin and made me promise to survive, who'd believed we'd both make it out. I'd kept half the promise. The realization settled in my chest, heavier than hunger, colder than the snow. I was alive, and he wasn't. Survival wasn't a gift, it was a debt, and I had no idea how to pay it. Mama's face surfaced in my mind, not the faded memory I'd been chasing for months, but clear and vivid. Her hands kneading bread, the way she'd hum while cooking, how she'd kiss our foreheads before bed, both of us, no matter how old we got. She'd had a rule. Brothers stay together. Always. No matter what. I'd broken the rule. "I'm sorry," I whispered. My voice sounded strange, cracked and thin. "Mama, I'm sorry." The words vanished into the forest, meaning nothing, changing nothing. Apologies were another luxury we couldn't afford. The dead didn't need them. The living couldn't give them. All that remained was the space between. This frozen moment where I was neither alive enough to matter nor dead enough to rest. Somewhere in the distance, a branch snapped. Probably an animal, or guard, or my mind inventing threats because the real ones weren't enough. I didn't move, didn't care. If they found me, they'd shoot me, and this would be over. Simple mathematics. But they didn't come. The forest stayed silent, except for the wind and the distant rumbling that might have been artillery. The Red Army, pushing west, liberating camps and villages and prisoners who'd survived long enough to be saved. Days away, maybe hours. So close. Too late. I closed my eyes, tried to find something inside worth holding on to, a memory, a prayer, a reason to get up and keep moving. But there was only emptiness where hope used to be. Daniel had carried the hope for both of us. Without him, I was just a body going through motions, a ghost wearing skin. The cold crept deeper. My breathing slowed. This was how it ended then. Not with bullets or gas or the spectacular violence of the camps, but with quiet surrender in a forest that didn't care. Maybe that was better. Maybe this was mercy. Time passed. How much? Impossible to say. Then, footsteps, close, multiple sets, crunching through snow with purpose. I opened my eyes but didn't move. If it was guards, let them finish it. If it was prisoners, they couldn't help me. No one could. Over here. A voice. Male. Speaking Russian. Russians. The thought registered distantly, without emotion. Liberation had arrived. Just in time to find me frozen and dying. Too far gone to save. The mathematics of timing. Cruel and precise. Hands touched my shoulders. Rolled me onto my back. A face appeared above me. Young, dark-haired, wearing a Soviet uniform. He said something in Russian I didn't understand. His expression was carefully neutral, the look of someone who'd seen too many horrors to react anymore. Other soldiers appeared. One wrapped a blanket around me, actual wool, warm, the first genuine warmth I'd felt in months. Another tried to lift me. I couldn't help. My body was frozen solid, a statue carved from ice and trauma. They carried me, through the forest, away from the place I'd collapsed. I watched the canopy pass above me, branches and sky and the occasional glimpse of soldier faces. They looked young. Too young. But everyone looked young now. War aged you in ways that had nothing to do with years. We reached a road. Trucks waited there. Soviet trucks, not German. Prisoners sat in the backs, wrapped in blankets, their faces holding the same empty expression I probably wore. The soldiers loaded me into one, placing me among the others. No one spoke. What was there to say? The truck started moving, heading east, toward freedom that felt like another prison, toward survival I hadn't earned, toward a future Daniel would never see. I thought about challah bread, 4 eggs or 5, the way Mama's hands shaped the braids, the smell filling our apartment on Friday nights. Daniel had wanted to remember the recipe, had believed we'd have the chance to make it together, to rebuild something from the ashes. He'd been wrong, but he'd also been right. We'd promised to survive. I was still alive. That meant something, had to mean something. Not for me. I was past caring about my own life. But for him, for Mama, for Papa, for Istvan and Jakob and all the faces in the Appellplatz whose names I'd never learned. They couldn't tell their stories anymore. So I'd have to tell them. The truck rolled on. Inside me, something shifted. Not hope, nothing that strong. But awareness. Responsibility. The debt of survival wasn't something you could repay. But you could honor it. You could remember. You could speak. You could refuse to let the silence win. My eyes stayed open, watching the sky lighten as we drove east, watching the world continue despite everything. Knowing that somewhere behind us, in a forest clearing, my brother lay in snow that would melt with spring. Knowing I'd left him there. knowing I'd carry him forward anyway, the only way I could, by surviving, by remembering, by refusing to forget what they'd tried so hard to erase. The war wasn't over, but for me, something had ended, and something else, sharp-edged and painful and undeniable, had begun. January 27th, 1945. Dawn. The Soviet 322nd Rifle Division liberated Auschwitz-Birkenau at approximately 1500 hours. I wasn't there to see it. I was already kilometers away, in a field hospital that smelled of antiseptic and death, staring at a ceiling I couldn't really see. The doctors said I'd live. They said it as if that were good news. My feet were gone, amputated below the ankles after gangrene made the choice simple. The frostbite had eaten through tissue and bone, leaving nothing worth saving. I felt nothing when they told me. Just nodded, added it to the list of things I'd lost. Around me, other survivors filled makeshift beds. Some cried, some slept, some stared at nothing with the same empty expression I probably wore. We were the ones who'd made it, the lucky ones, they called us. Lucky to have survived, lucky to be free. The word tasted like ash. Through the hospital tent's opening, I could see snow falling. Light, peaceful. Nothing like the blizzard that had swallowed Daniel. The world continued its cycles. Snow and sun and seasons turning. Indifferent to the mathematics of atrocity. Spring would come. The bodies would thaw. The earth would accept what had been buried there. A nurse approached my bed. Young, Russian, her eyes kind in a way that made me want to look away. Kindness felt wrong now. Dangerous. Like something that could crack the ice I'd built around what remained of myself. "You need to eat," she said in broken Polish. I wasn't hungry. Hadn't been hungry in days, despite months of starvation. Hunger required wanting to live. Wanting required hope. I had neither. But I ate anyway, mechanically. Because Daniel had told me to survive. Because that was the promise. Because the debt demanded payment, even when you had nothing left to give. "Your name?" she asked. "Aaron." "Family?" The question hung between us. Family. What did that word mean now? My parents were gone. Dead in Auschwitz, or another camp, I'd never know which. Daniel was in a forest grave. I was the last. The end of a line that had stretched back generations, all the way to ancestors whose names I'd never learned, all reduced to one broken body in a field hospital. "No family," I said. She nodded. Didn't push. She'd heard the same answer too many times to be surprised. That night, I dreamed of the clearing. But in the dream, everything went differently. In the dream, the bullet missed Daniel. We made it to the trees together. We ran until the forest opened onto a road, until liberation found us both, until we stood side by side and watched the sun rise on a world without barbed wire. I woke to darkness and phantom pain where my feet used to be. The days blurred together. Doctors checked wounds, nurses brought food. Other survivors traded stories in whispers, comparing camps and selections and losses, creating a collective catalog of trauma. I listened but didn't speak. My story was mine to carry. Sharing it wouldn't make it lighter. On the fourth day, they brought news. Auschwitz had been fully liberated. The remaining prisoners, maybe 7,000, had been found alive. The gas chambers had been destroyed by fleeing SS. The crematoria partially demolished. The evidence scattered but not erased. The world would know. That knowledge should have meant something. Should have felt like justice or closure or the beginning of accountability. Instead, it felt hollow. The world knowing didn't bring Daniel back, didn't resurrect the thousands in mass graves or the smoke that had risen from chimneys for years. Knowing changed nothing for the dead. But maybe it changed something for the living. The chaplain visited on the 5th day. Jewish, American, his uniform crisp and clean, his face showing the careful compassion of someone who'd been trained to comfort but couldn't possibly understand. He sat beside my bed and asked if I wanted to pray. I almost laughed. Prayer. As if words could reach whatever God had been absent in Auschwitz. As if speaking into silence could undo what had been done. But I let him pray anyway. His voice was steady, reciting words in Hebrew I half remembered from childhood. The mourners' Kaddish. For the dead. For Daniel. For everyone. When he finished, the silence felt different. Not empty, not full, just present. Do you want to talk about what happened? He asked. I looked at him. This American Jew with his clean uniform and his unbroken faith and his careful, trained compassion. How could I explain? How could I make him understand that survival wasn't salvation? That freedom didn't erase memory? That every breath I took was stolen from someone who deserved it more? No, I said. He nodded, left a card with an address where I could write if I changed my mind. I never did. 2 weeks after liberation, they moved me to a displaced persons camp, a barracks with bunks and meals and people trying to figure out where to go now that the world had ended and somehow continued. I sat in the corner mostly, watched others make plans, Palestine, America, anywhere but here. Listened to them talk about futures like futures were possible. I thought about challah bread, 4 eggs or 5, the way Daniel had wanted to remember, the recipe we'd never make together. One morning, I found paper and a pen, borrowed from a Red Cross worker who didn't ask why I needed it. I sat at a table in the corner of the barracks and began to write. Not for catharsis, not for healing. Those were luxuries I couldn't afford. I wrote because someone had to, because Daniel couldn't, because Istvan couldn't, because Jakob and the woman who'd shared water and the boy in the Appellplatz and the thousands of others whose names I'd never learned, they couldn't. I wrote their silence, gave it words, gave it shape, made it something that couldn't be erased or denied or forgotten. The words came slowly at first, then faster. My hand cramped. The page filled, then another, and another. I wrote about January 24th, 1945, about roll call at 4:10, about the cold that came first, about selections and trucks and a clearing in the forest, about a brother who'd believed we'd survive together. I wrote until the memories stopped burning quite so hot, until they became something I could carry instead of something that carried me. The sun rose through the barracks window. Light fell across the pages, illuminating words that would outlast me, outlast memory, outlast the silence they'd tried to impose. Somewhere in a Polish forest, snow was melting. Spring approaching, the earth warming. But the silence Daniel and I had walked through, the silence of Auschwitz, the silence before the shot, the silence that followed, that silence would never thaw. It stays frozen in memory, in testimony, in these words. The gates opened days later, but the silence followed me home. It follows me still, and I will carry it forward for all of us, until the last witness falls silent too.